Hey there, my name is Nicki Koziarz, and I'm so excited just to spend a few minutes with you sharing just some of the lessons that God is teaching me during this season. It has been a really hard year for all of us, and we've walked through a lot of hard things. I bet if you and I were sitting face to face right now, you could ramble off at least a dozen really hard and trying circumstances that you personally have walked through this last year. And I have found that sometimes when I'm walking through something really, really hard, a lot of times I ask this question: God, have you forgotten me? Can anyone relate to what that feels like? That question, that wondering, God, are you really seeing this hard and trying thing that I'm walking through? Because sometimes it feels like we're praying prayers that are just going up into outer space. And sometimes it feels like we're reading Bible verses that just feel like they're band-aids on our souls. And sometimes it feels like no one really gets what it's like to be in our shoes. Well, I want you to know that the past couple of years, I have studied the life of a man named Noah. Now, if you have been in the church any amount of time, you have most likely heard the passage of Noah, the biblical account of this man who received this really hard and impossible assignment to build an ark because massive destruction was coming to the world. In fact, God gave Noah this assignment that you and I can look at today and go, that is really hard. But see, sometimes we look at other people's hard assignments and we think, well, at least I don't have something that hard. And we start to discount our own hard thing. But today I want to give you permission to look at the biblical account of Noah that we're going to do here in just a second, but also look at him and see that it was hard, but also to look at your own life and to recognize that God cares about every hard and trying situation that you are walking through as well. When I was studying the life of Noah, I had to really debunk some misconceptions that I had about him. Now, I am not a singer, I am an author. I will stay in my lane. But I don't know, did you ever go to vacation Bible school as a little girl, or maybe in Sunday school, you sang this song? It went like this: The Lord said to Noah, there's going to be a floody, floody. Anyone relate to that song? Remember that song? Okay. I feel like I kind of grew up with this vacation Bible school version of this passage of Noah and the ark. And I had this misconception about what this was really like for Noah to receive this assignment from God. But over the last few years, as I studied the life of Noah, I learned some really important lessons. And I saw in his life some decisions that we can make when life is hard and doubt is rising. But there's one verse that I want to spend just a minute with you on today. I would love to have the whole hour to get to share with you everything that I've learned, but maybe we'll get to do all of that in person. We'll see here coming up soon. But I want to share with you just one verse, because if I could only teach on one verse for this passage for the rest of my life, it would be this one. It's found in Genesis chapter 8. And before we arrive in Genesis chapter 8, we have to kind of know what's happened at this point. Okay, so Noah has received the assignment from God. He has obeyed God. He has built this ark. He has walked through so much doubt, so much defeat from his own community. Can you imagine the naysayers that were around him and the things that they were saying to him, and just the story that doubt would try to write inside of Noah's soul? So then he comes onto the ark and God graciously closes the door. And this was actually one of the hardest parts of the passage when I was studying it. When you really start to think about the idea that God was the one who closed the door and Noah was the one who was inside the ark with his family and all of these creatures, okay? And so the flood begins, and the reality of this prophetic assignment that he had received is starting to be fulfilled. But then the hardest part feels like it's over, right? And sometimes I think when we're walking through something really hard, we think like, oh, it was the car accident. It was the day we got the job loss. It was the day that we were diagnosed with cancer. It was the day that we received the divorce papers. We think that that day is actually the hardest day. But I have found that often after the hard assignment comes and we feel like we've gotten through that part is really when the hard days begin. And so I wondered, when Noah was on the ark for 150 days, Did he ever ask God, God, have you forgotten me? And then we turn to Genesis chapter 8 and verse 1. And we see this verse that is so important to the story. It says, but God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. Now, when I was studying this passage, I actually came across a really interesting video. It was from a man who was an atheist and he did not believe in God at all. And he was actually using this verse to kind of debunk the idea that God would somehow forget about his people. And so he said things like, why would God put Noah and his family in this ark for 150 days and then just forget about them? Like, what kind of God does that? And sometimes I think the world looks at you and I as followers of Jesus Christ, and they ask the same question. Why would God allow that person to walk through that hard situation? Why would God allow them to experience that? Why won't God do something about this? Well, if we were to read this verse just as it is, but God remembered Noah, it would be easy in our cultural context to think that God did, in fact, forget Noah and his family. But this word remembered, if we trace it all the way back to the original meaning, it doesn't mean remembered as in forgot, like, oh, I forgot my daughter has an orthodontist appointment today, or I forgot that it was my birthday that was coming up, or I forgot that I had an assignment due, or something like that. Not that kind of forgetfulness. In fact, the word remembered here, when it's translated into the original Hebrew and Greek meaning, it means to take action. Remembered means to take action, okay? So up until this point, God had given Noah the assignment, and there was a process for the assignment, and he had walked through all of the hard things of this assignment. But now in this place where he was waiting on God to move would actually become one of the hardest places. And I think sometimes when we're walking through these really hard and trying situations where we're in this place between the problem and the promise, it's very easy to start to wonder, has God forgotten me? But I want to encourage you today, the same way that we can see in this passage with Noah, that God actually took action, because we see right after this in the next verse that God sent a wind, and a wind came blowing through and it started to dissolve the flood. And pretty soon we see that the end of the season has come and the ark is landed, and it is time for Noah to come off of the ark. And so when I think about the way that God remembers you and I today, that God is taking action on our behalf, that he has not forgotten us, I think this is so important for us to stand in a posture of remembering God. God remembers us, and now it is our responsibility to remember who he is to us. And so a lot of times when we're at the end of a hard season, we kind of just exhale and we just kind of forget about all of the lessons and the growth that we experience in that season, because we just want to get through it, right? Like, had I been the one on the ark, I would have been like, open up the door. I want to get off this ark. But Noah had patience in the plan. And so we can remember today, one of the action steps that we can take is to remember that God is in charge of the plan ultimately for your life, for Noah's life, for my life. But we are in control of our obedience. And this has been something that has been so life-giving for me coming through this season of COVID-19, as I've worked through so many cancellations, so many hard things, so many trying circumstances, just like you have. I found myself at the end. I mean, I know we're not through this season yet. Like, we're still battling through this, but we're starting to see the door open. We're starting to see a new season coming into place. But are we going to walk into this new season and hold on to the bitterness and the pain of what the last season brought us? Or are we going to take the lessons, the growth that we experienced, and walk into this new season knowing that God remembers us and he is taking action? He is doing things on our behalf that we don't even know about right now. But as we step forward and as we believe, we will see the fulfillment of God's promises in our lives. I hope this encourages you today just to remember that one word, remembered, that God is taking action, but it also requires us to take action on our part. And I hope that this short little teaching blesses you and encourages you in some way today. Thanks for being here today, you guys.